Dark Light, Galerie Max Hetzler, Paris, Spring 2021. So the show is divided into two parts and two distinct but connected series of paintings. In the first gallery you have the daybreak paintings, and in the second space the nightfall works. The daybreak paintings are landscapes, with a low slung horizon across a portrait format, and then the nightfall works are without any relational horizon and are both landscape and portrait, as well as square in format. The daybreak paintings are the first works to be encountered by the viewer. 3 paintings on 3 walls in an intimately sized room, and then you are drawn to the larger gallery where there are 6 paintings across 4 walls, 6 paintings larger in scale in a space that physically reaches upwards towards the sky and is top-lit by daylight. In doing a show divided into the 2 separate time zones of day and night, then you may think that the space that relies solely upon artificial light would be the natural choice in which to install the nighttime works, but I thought that if you flip that around, then you would be able, with a little more scrutiny, you'd be able to examine the differences in the colour of the night. That reading would then assimilate and integrate with the reading and rereading of the daybreak pictures. Together, the 2 spaces talk of a whole, of a connected whole, which is the cycle of our existence, from day to night and back again. The raw, material nature of these paintings is historically connected to that of medieval icon paintings, to a time when the sun is thought to have circumnavigated the earth, a time when our scientific understanding of the universe was quite shallow and quite misinformed. I have drawn together metals such as golds and silvers which have been used reverently throughout art history, spanning a bridge between economy and spirituality, combining them together with other alloys across the picture plane. Together, these raw elements have played a major role in facilitating our science and understanding of where and who we are. Conductive by nature, they offer a path of least resistance, and today are often used in high-grade computational components. I like how these materials have provided a spiritual light in our past, and today they guide us through the far reaches of the galaxy and universe. Another aspect of their material nature is how they respond to daylight or indeed any light. They can detect and reflect almost imperceivable fluctuations in the ambient light of their surroundings. This level of inherent engagement fixes the picture plane in the present tense, active and responsive to its situation and surroundings. In the studio, subtle shifts of colour pan across the paintings throughout the day as the clouds scud by in the sky. Passages of light can fall inexplicably and ricochet from the surface into new directions. Parts of the composition are suddenly illuminated and form new questions, or offer different perspectives to the viewer. All this activity anchors the paintings in real time, so the surface operates at that imperceivable, liminal distance between memory and the present. With the nightfall pictures, there are further details and subtleties buried within the overall grounds of dark indigos. Drawn with graphite, which is another conductor of electricity, linear constellations and conjunctions appear and disappear. Their outlines seem to register by the naked eye alone. Negative forms become whole, and space dissolves and reforms as you scan the picture plane. With the daybreak pictures, golds of differing hues and carats are literally buried beneath thin layers of paint. Translucent pale pinks and creams are washed over the metal foils, almost to the point of obscurity. Spaces are formed and erased in equal measure, and your perception of which alters in accordance. Isn't it the sun that blinds us from the depths of our own reality? A couple of years back I attempted to photograph our galaxy on the one single night of the year that is best to do so, and from the clearest location on the planet, looking up to look in. So, from the Atacama Desert in Chile, on the last new moon of the summer, armed with a high-end digital camera, all alignments were made. The angle of latitude of the tripod relative to the equator, the mount itself aligned with the southern celestial pole, and then when the shutter was opened the camera would turn ever so slowly at an equal and opposite speed to the rotation of the Earth. This precise mechanical movement and rotation would then rectify or remove all the star trails that you would otherwise capture with long exposures of a night sky. The resulting images were somewhat overwhelming. images that we know of or have seen in astronomical journals, full of colour and clouds of different gases, all captured with just a second's exposure. But added to the formal beauty of the image was the experience itself. Being out in the desert in the southern hemisphere looking into the galaxy, not out, as we do in the northern hemisphere. 200 to 400 billion stars passing by in the night sky. All the time I had to maintain focus on the southern celestial pole, an abstract point in the infinity of space around which the Earth rotates. If I lost this point, then the images would deviate and I would lose clarity. Then behind me, over my shoulder, I saw a couple of stars that I recognised from the northern hemisphere, 2 stars that form part of the Plough, or the Big Dipper, a constellation that straddles both hemispheres, a constellation that I use to find the North Star. So in my mind I was able to redraw the constellation through the Earth and point through the desert floor at the North Star. Immediately the hairs on my neck stood on end as my body shuddered with the simple realisation that in fact, yes, the Earth is round, and yes, it is a sphere. I was stood alone in space, held in place by gravity alone among this vast universe. That whole experience is what inspired the making of these nightfall pictures. The idea that if you focus in on a predetermined part of the night sky, you will see more than you first expected. That with a small shift of time frame, that landscape will redefine itself and realign itself within a much larger context. That we are united by this landscape of the night, and that the galaxy in which we reside is only partially known. The math of science and understanding has expanded this vision tenfold in the last half-century, defined and redefined our scale of understanding. No matter how distant or abstract the universe feels to us as individuals, it's through the language of math that its intricacies and beauty are revealed. I'm always amazed to think how much further through time we can see when we hide behind the shadow of our own sun, when night falls. So with this series of nightfall paintings, I have purposely extrapolated compositions from within a larger, earlier painting. I have refocused or redrawn compositions that were somehow missed when part of a bigger picture. The resulting series of works come together and act as an atlas of the whole or a focus of a particular region within the grand scheme of things. A larger section of mind space presents itself, but somehow remains out of reach. With the Kyoto Snows paintings, or daybreak works, there is a subtle but perceptible shift of scale with the panels. Whereas the panels are larger in the nightfall works, this offers more ground and fosters an increase of space. The panels are similar with the daybreak works, which creates an intensity of focus into the picture plane, as though you were looking at a specific point or moment and not out into a large and vast array. This difference of looking into and looking out of was something that I noticed within 2 Japanese woodblock prints that I have in the studio. Both works by masters of the ukiyo-e tradition. One was a detailed study of morning glory flowers by Hokusai, and the other the seminal print of a rainstorm over Shinohashi Bridge by Hiroshige. In a way, they acted as compositional starting points for me. I loosely transcribed the composition of Hokusai's flowers into my language of divided integers, and then onto a much larger initial painting. I then subdivided that work into these paintings, which, if you study closely, they are compositionally interconnected. They come together and align within a shared timeline as one completed whole. Then with the Hiroshige, I imagined myself sat under the bridge, within the print, seeking shelter from the rain and looking into what would become of the night sky. From there I made a much larger composition which was then drawn, redrawn, cut up and spliced into what was to become the nightfall works. A recurring theme across all these paintings is that of the only completed character, the Zero, infinity's twin. In the first space, the smaller gallery, you follow its low transit across a fractured landscape within dawn-like refractions of light. Then again, in the larger space, it traverses high in the night sky, acting as a moon or celestial axis. This completed figure anchors celestial points and navigational conjunctions within the surrounding constellations. The youngest of the integers within base 10, in philosophical terms, the Zero inherits the most complex identity. It is at one moment the symbol of the infinite, and at the same time stands for nothing at all. Formally astute as a fixed point of focus, it has the capability to undermine the most advanced computational mathematics, and it is both everything and nothing, empty in the infinite. All of these works harbour and rely upon the grid through form and function. The grid itself acts as a gateway to the abstract in 1, 2 and 3 dimensions. It was born through the need to measure and tax the land, and is used to illuminate the darkness beyond our galaxy. In these works, it activates a coming together of separate intentions and expands beyond the relative whole. It records the passage of daylight as it traverses the individual canvases and ultimately turns the whole work into one singular timepiece. This structure of the grid of mathematics is also included in the smaller works on paper that are hung alongside the show. Silkscreen by my own design, a grid underscores these drawings, bringing a point of measure or reflection towards a single broad brushstroke of ink. Plotted against the rationale of disfigured numbers, the concept of the infinite belies the act of creation, from the macro to the micro and back again. These swabs of ink pertain references to the biological as well as the astronomical, in a time when we are all focused on quite a specific biological landscape. A conjunction occurred during the making of this exhibition. Not any conjunction, but the Great Conjunction. Not since the year 1226, that's almost 800 years ago, has Jupiter and Saturn appeared so closely aligned in our night sky. Back then the Sun was still in orbit around the Earth, and it is the simple beauty of these alignments that I find so fascinating and which ultimately inspires the work. And now, through present-day technology, we can even see the dark light that transpires from the depths of our universe, when we train our computationally assisted mind's eye upon its centre.